thanks you guys for that discussion. Mario, I believe we're ready to head to our book of the week, brought to you by James St. Simon.
The book of the week is The Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoevsky. The reason why I chose this book is because we've been reading it for about 2 months. So it really is.
You mean 20 years?
Yeah. We've been reading it since Lent started. But why is this book always in the zeitgeist? Why are people always talking about this book?
Especially lately.
Especially lately. Yeah, absolutely. It seems like if you look up the Brothers Karamazov or Dostoevsky, it's right there. And a lot of people are talking about it, Christian or not. And that's an important part of why this book is so important. Because whether you're Christian or you're atheist, this book is relevant. Dostoevsky is famously a realist. And what makes this book so real is that no one in this book behaves as you would expect them to. And he handles those paradoxes in a very intelligent way, so that it's not to minimize their stance and their view. And you see this specifically in the problem of evil with Ivan and the suffering that these characters endure. And these characters embody ideals. They embody worldviews. But what he really shows is also what it is to be a Christian in a world where there is suffering. And I think that that's what's very important. Yes. You could either read it and become more convinced of your Christianity, or you can read it and become an atheistic nihilist.
Wow.
One of the most important things I would say about this book is how he takes the characters like Father Ferapont, who is very pious, but you can see his prelest attitude, this delusion of piety that leads him to be very harsh, and he loses charity. You have the seminarian Rakitin, and Rakitin is studying to be a priest and a theologian, but he's the most cynical and just ill-tempered person in the whole story, who has so much resentment, and his heart is just hard. And then you have another surprising character, Katerina Ivanovna, who is virtuous in the eyes of many, but that virtue is her pride, right? And she uses that virtue. She uses her moral superiority to dominate, and her love even becomes controlling and domineering. So you can kind of see that what he's showing is, in some ways, and I say this rhetorically as well, Christianity can get in the way of Christ in many ways. And we see this with the Grand Inquisitor specifically, when you can study God so much that you actually forget who he is in studying him. And you see that in those characters. But he doesn't leave it there, thank God. He gives us characters like Alyosha. He gives us characters like Elder Zosima. He gives us characters, even Grushenka, who is surprisingly a gem in this story. That when Elder Zosima, in the eyes of the pious, seems like he's lenient, he's too loving of sinners, he shows a self-sacrificial love and a humility that doesn't need to please everyone institutionally. And we see Alyosha as well. Even in the moment of his great weakness and doubt, a little bit of kindness from the right person reminded him of why he does what he does. And it's for goodness sake, to glorify God, whether he's going to get the credit for it or not, or whether he has any kind of advantage to gain from it or not. Amen. And that chapter, The Onion, with Grushenka, that little bit of charity, when she had the opportunity to really pounce on someone's vulnerability, she gives grace. Yeah. And that grace revitalizes Alyosha. And it reminds him, he restores his faith in humanity and his faith in God. And it's that whole thing, right? I don't reject God, I reject his world. Amen. And he handles that so well, that the world is full of suffering. Yes. What do you make of it? You can either become like Smerdyakov or Ivan, who can't even tell the difference between the devil or his own mind, or you can be like Alyosha, right? Who takes even the little miracles. And you can appreciate the little miracles, and it'll, in an abundance of faith, a little miracle will take you as far as the cross. And so I recommend anybody, if you haven't read, for some reason, the Brothers Karamazov. I know this is intimidating because of the size. It'll be well worth it. It started me on my path to orthodoxy because of just how beautiful it was before I even knew what orthodoxy was. Now that I'm reading it as an Orthodox Christian, I mean, it's must read.
James, thank you for that book of the week. That's awesome. I have a question for you.
Sure.
You made an interesting statement. You said someone could read this book, read Brothers Karamazov, and come away even stronger in their faith, or turn to nihilism and turning away from God. How so? Let's go with that second part. How would someone read this, which a book that to you and I and to everyone in this room inspires us, humbles us, calls us to the beauty of God? You mentioned, that grace, right, that you see from Grushenka. It reminds me of the kiss that Christ gave, right, in the Grand Inquisitor, right, that bit of mercy and grace. How can someone fall into nihilism after reading this book?
The problem of evil and the reality of suffering can be quite convincing in his argument that Ivan's dialogue with Alyosha as to why he rejects the world, and these stories of people suffering, people who you see as innocent children, who should be loved and protected by their parents, suffer. And to someone who has even an inkling of a sense of justice, your heart breaks when you hear those things, and you wonder, where is God?
Right.
Why does he allow this to happen? Right. But I think you touched on something, even in the question. The answer is somewhat in the question. It's the person who is encountering the situation and where they are. You see, Ivan is tormented in his conscience by the problem of evil because he has a sense of justice. But his sense of justice comes from somewhere that also causes him to recognize that while there is evil, there is also beauty.
Yeah.
And he can't reconcile the two, and he has a very difficult time. He's not completely an atheist, hence the devil is always tormenting him, and he knows it.
Right.
Unlike Smerdyakov. Smerdyakov is fully convinced of his atheism and nihilism, and we see that in what it leads him to commit, and his mindset of, well, all things are lawful. If there is no God, all things are lawful. And people who might say that I'm an atheist, but don't live with that kind of mindset, what is holding you to virtue? What is holding you to goodwill towards man? What is holding you to be a decent person? And is that enough for you, right? Because ultimately, your ability to love and your desire to love, it comes from somewhere. And that question of where does it come from, and why can't I live without it? Why can't I just live with every, desire and animalistic instinct that I have? Why do I admire beauty? Why do I long for community?
Right.
Where does that come from?
100%.
You know it doesn't come from the same place as evil.
Right.